And now, the survival show that once survived on long-term, storable, canned unicorn meat. In this episode, we sit down with Greg Gottfried. He's a strength and conditioning coach who's going to pump you up for the apocalypse. Howdy, and welcome to In the Rabbit Hole's Urban Survival Podcast. This is episode number 169. I'm your host, Aaron, and you are in the rabbit hole. Safe and sound. Greg, welcome to In the Rabbit Hole.
Thanks, Aaron.
So I'm excited to have you on. We don't talk about this topic, the topic of strength training and physical fitness, enough. So I'm excited to have you on today. But tell us who you are and what do you do and all that fun stuff. Let's start there.
Okay. My name's Greg Gottfried, and I'm a strength and conditioning coach. I'm also a track and field throws coach. So that's the discus, shot put, and hammer. And then I also teach CPR and first aid. I'm a member of my local CERT and just recently got my ham license.
Oh, very cool. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm in the same boat as you are with ham. I'm still in the early stages of what the hell am I doing here?
Yeah, there's so much more than I thought there ever would be.
Yeah, it's weird. It's one of those things that I think in a lot of ways it's actually a lot more simple than people make it out to be. But there is a lot to it. It gets complicated quick. But anyway, so you're into CERT and all this other stuff. How did you, I guess, do you consider yourself a prepper?
I absolutely do.
Okay.
I would say and I haven't always been my whole life. Hurricane Katrina was what really kind of flipped the switch for me.
Okay.
Seeing how helpless people were and the lawlessness, just the devastation, really forced me to be honest with what situation my family was in.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm here in Portland, Oregon area, so the earthquake threat is a very real thing. And so I just kind of, like I said, took a look at where my family was and needed to make some changes. And so since Katrina, I've really kind of gone full bore into making sure that my family's safe and prepared.
So is that what you first thought of when you saw those images on TV and such? Was, my God, what if this happened to my family? Or was it more nebulous than that? How did that hit you?
Yeah, like I said, it was like a light switch for me. You see those cartoons with those little light bulbs going off above you. That's exactly what happened to me.
Yeah.
I was, sitting in a townhouse and we have two shared walls, and I'm thinking, we don't have any extra food and we don't have any water, and my shotguns are stored at my parents' house. Mm-hmm. What the hell do we do? And so it just made sense.
Because Portland's not exactly the bastion of firearms love and affection, and this is a bit off topic, but I'm just curious, how does that work for you in your area? Do you find that comes up in conversations often? Do you find that preparedness in general is looked at weird in your area? How does the social aspect of all that come about for you?
Guns are kind of a hot topic here, and we're not exactly the most welcoming of firearms. But I've been pretty lucky to be around a lot of people that are like-minded. And, it's not something that I talked about a lot with my friends and family before I kind of got into all this. But believe it or not, they were all kind of closet preppers too. So
really?
Yeah, I've been kind of lucky.
Yeah, I always think it's interesting when we reach out and we sort of expose ourselves, and it's surprising to me how many people will kind of hushedly, I'm making up words today, under their breath will say, yeah, I'm kind of into that stuff too. A lot more people than people think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So strength training and physical fitness, let's start with, why is that a passion for you? And then we'll come back and marry these two things together.
Sure. So I've been very lucky. My parents have always encouraged a healthy and active lifestyle. I mean, I I played in the woods as a kid for hours and hours and hours. And my parents would let me do any sport I had any interest in. And our family did things together too, always going on bike rides and playing sports together. So being an active is all I've ever known. It's something that I really find a lot of joy in. But I think it was between high school and college. I did track and field in high school, and I was a pretty undersized discus thrower, and I wanted to compete at the college level. And I was fortunate enough to have a very brilliant personal trainer that helped me out with nutrition, and seeing the changes that just simply fixing my nutrition gave me a real appreciation just for the fitness world and what we can do with nutrition and fitness and all that. And I gained a bunch of muscle mass in that summer, and it kind of paved the way for my higher education. And I've never looked back.
Greg, let's take a quick break for this message. Listeners, do you get at least $2.50 a month worth of value out of ITRH? You should see what we do for the members. Check it out today by visiting itrh.net. Members get access to episodes a day early, an invitation to the secret ITRH Armada Facebook group so you can chat with myself and other like-minded individuals, encrypted forums so you can chat securely with like-minded people about preparedness, a free copy of the book Owning Your Survival, 9 Steps for Surviving, Survival, and Preparedness, access to our famous Bob and Emergency Kits video class with special download checklists, my insane ammo inventory spreadsheet. You'll finally know at the click of a mouse what you have on hand. Access to every episode ever produced by ITRH, including one from a famous knife maker that was never aired. That's over 160 hours of survival conversations with experts to help you get better prepared. And I'm adding stuff on a pretty regular basis at this point, which includes the 10-part series on getting prepared. Visit itrh.net today to learn more and become part of the ITRH Roving Horde Armada. You'll be helping this show stay safe and sound that helps you stay safe and sound. Now, back to Greg for why fitness should be a lot more important to most preppers. So where does preparedness and physical fitness and nutrition intersect for you when it comes to preparedness?
Well, like I mentioned before, I'm, a member of my local CERT, and I teach CPR and first aid. I'm a member at the local gun club also. And I can't help but notice how terrible a shape people are in. Or they're in really good shape, but they don't, practice good nutrition, or the things that they're prepping are like horrible foods. And it's kind of the thing that I like to do is kind of help people fill in those gaps. So when I'm talking to somebody about nutrition, I'll bring up, well, now that you got all these healthy foods, what are you going to do if we get snowed in? Or do you have access to more food like this? Or, when I'm talking to people about compressions or first aid, it's like, do you think you can maintain chest compressions for, 15 minutes before an ambulance shows up? Or can you get that 300-pound victim out of harm's way? Mm-hmm. I just noticed that a lot of people aren't physically fit, and they call themselves preppers. It kind of gets under my skin. It's like, if you're not ready for life right now, how are you going to be ready when a catastrophe hits?
For the guy that's sitting there now listening to us wade into this territory that sorry everybody, I'm still hopped up on Claritin over here. How deep do you have to go? I mean, are we going to talk about becoming a gym rat today and spending, like, basically making working out a part-time job, or is it that involved, or can it be much more simple than that?
It can be really simple. What's important is that, we can move through full range of motions in compound movements like a squat, or, a hip hinge, like in a deadlift or something like that, or be able to push or pull and be pain free. A lot of people are just sitting at their desks all day long and they have really tight hips and really weak glutes and they just can't move around very well. They don't have that mobility that they once had as kids.
Mm-hmm.
Climbing isn't something that they ever think that they can do again. What's important is being able to move through life more efficiently.
And I guess, how do we get there? Because I think a lot of people, they also, especially guys, their brains still tell their bodies that they're 18 years old, and that's just not the case. I know I went through that years ago, right before I had a back surgery, or right after I had a back surgery, and I went to go try to do push-ups, and I was just furious at how few I could do at that point. And part of that was all the reconstructive surgery I'd had and everything else, but a lot of that was just I'd gotten in really piss poor shape. And going back to the gym rat versus it's not that bad. How much, on a weekly basis, what are we talking about here as far as what it would take for the average person, both in how much time they have to invest and how long it would take them to get to a place of just being functionally fit, we'll say?
It doesn't need to take forever. You can get a good, well-rounded workout done in an hour, and you don't need to do that every single day. But, 3 to 5 times a week is fine. So we're looking 3 to 5 hours max. The key is to make sure that you're doing the right things. And that's where it's really important to make sure that especially us guys, we're checking our pride at the door and we're finding a trainer or a coach that can actually help us get where we need to go.
And I want to come back to that trainer bit in just a minute, because I think it's very important. I have a lot of questions for that, but I want to stay with this theme for a bit. And I think, as far as guys checking our egos at the door, and girls too, women, I should say, and for a lot of us being in a physical fitness routine, there's a big gap between, whatever sport we played in say high school or college, and maybe in our 30s or 40s and beyond, having atrophied a lot. There's also a big knowledge gap there, and there's an atrophy of knowledge there. What do you see people get wrong in their exercise?
That's a good question. The number one thing that I see people get wrong is all they do is cardio. Not that there's anything wrong with cardio, but I got
to be ready for the zombies, man. I got to run.
Well, yeah, but you don't need to run a 10K.
Yeah.
And again, if you're a runner, that's great. More power to you. But as far as being effective in life and getting the most bang for our buck, I think the real value is in strength training.
Okay.
And making sure it's a well-rounded strength training routine. So what you're doing is some sort of squat, some sort of hip hinge, a push, a pull, and a weighted carry or a bridging, like, doing a plank or something. The cardio that people are doing, it drives me bonkers as a coach is, like I mentioned, people are sitting in their desk all day long. So they've got these really tight hips and hunched over shoulders. We've got this terrible posture. And then they go and they drive to the gym, and then they sit on a bike for 30 minutes, which is in the same position they've been in all day long. So their hips aren't getting any looser. Their shoulders aren't being pulled back at all. And then they call it a day. And you're not really doing anything to help yourself out. Whereas if we spent that same 30 minutes doing the squat, the hinge, a push and a pull, and a weighted carry, we're adding muscle mass to our bodies. And we can actually sculpt the way that we look by lifting weights. You can't do that with cardio. Plus, there's been a lot of studies that have shown that heart rate and the metabolic effect of doing resistance training or lifting weights lasts for far longer post-workout than if you were to do cardio.
That's interesting. I kind of knew that from personal experience, but I'd never heard it stated outright. Why is that, do you think?
It's kind of an afterburn thing. You're tearing down muscle when you're lifting weights, and so your body's got to rebuild it. So there's just a lot more work that goes into repairing yourself post-workout than there is just doing cardio.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. And I mean, I think as far as sculpting and everything else, we've all seen the person that does run the 10K, and they look like death warmed. They still look like death warmed over. They just happen to be kind of lean. They
Yeah.
look like jerky, I guess is the way I would put it.
Usually someone that does a lot of cardio, they just look like a smaller versions of themselves or what they were before. They don't really change the way they look. And a lot of long distance runners have some imbalances themselves. They usually kind of have a flat butt. Yeah, so they're missing out on a lot of great gains that they can get from strength training.
Yeah. So in the event of an emergency or zombie apocalypse, what is this strength training and firmer butt going to do for me?
One, going to be able to get over all your obstacles that you're running away from the zombies. You'll be jumping walls and climbing trees won't be anything for you. But I kind of like to step back a little bit and let's take it from just a small weather thing. Let's say a tree falls down because of some rain in the roadway. Cardio is not going to help you with that. Deadlifting is going to help you move that tree.
That's fair. Okay. If somebody didn't get a trainer, and we'll come back to trainers, I'm going to kind of save trainers for last. But if somebody didn't get a trainer, how much information is there actually out there? Because some people can't afford a trainer. It does get expensive quick, or it can at least. What is out there in the way of information that people could actually do or get a hold of and develop some sort of routine that ensures they don't hurt themselves?
Sure. So in the age of the internet, there's tons and tons and tons of information. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of good information out there, but there is some bad information also. We can learn a lot from listening to podcasts and going on to YouTube. What I would say is what you really need to be looking out is making sure that you're looking for people that are talking about some of the things I'm talking about. As far as, you need to make sure that you're getting a well-rounded workout with, squats, hinging, push, pull, weighted carry. You'll hear me say that over and over. Mm-hmm. I host a podcast myself called the Hammer Shed Podcast. And I talk to a lot of wellness professionals and world famous athletes and coaches. We talk a lot about this type of stuff on that show. So there's a lot of great information out there. You just need to kind of weed through some of the muck.
Like, are there some resources that you think are better than others?
One of
your show is obviously going to be a good show, of course, but I mean,
right.
What else do we have out there?
I really like the work of Dan John. He's a strength and conditioning coach. He talks about a lot of these same things. He's got some really great books. One's called Simple Strength or Easy Strength. I can't remember. I'll send you a link to it.
Okay. And I'll make sure that's in the show notes.
Yeah. So, and he talks about this stuff. It is pretty easy. It's the hard part's actually following it.
Yeah. And I think that's another, before we move on to nutrition, I think that's another question I had for you, which is that motivation. A lot of people have a hard time finding the motivation to start. And then there's the motivation to stick with it. What do you find are the most productive tactics and strategies when it comes to starting and staying with it?
Well, I think that starting is probably the hardest part for people. Mm-hmm. And I find that the best, the most compliant person that I find is someone that's either in a lot of pain, both physically or emotionally, or someone that's got a larger goal. So I think setting goals is a really good way to make sure that, you get going and gives you a little bit more of a purpose and direction of what you want to do. And then sticking with it, I think keeping track of what you're doing helps, especially in strength training. Some people just kind of blindlessly go through a gym and do all the machines and then they go home. Mm. Well, first of all, I'm not one that's going to tell you that you need to be doing any machines. But I think it's important to keep track of what you're doing because then you can see the progress that you make. This isn't something that happens overnight, but it's not something that takes, decades to make progress in. So seeing that, hey, my squat got better, you know, than it was 2 weeks ago. And it's always fun to keep track of what your personal bests are. And I find that to be quite motivating.
Yeah, I found that to be helpful for me when I was really, really actively engaged with it and probably spending more time than most people would think was sane doing it. I found keeping track, especially since I never had a spotting buddy or anything, so I never had that person to kind of egg me on. But that was the way I egged myself on, was keeping track of things through just a simple gym log. And I could see my progress and then push harder.
Another thing that's a great motivator is just being able to do things that you haven't been able to do for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're doing things right, your movement should improve. You'll be more mobile, you'll be in less pain, and, you're just going to enjoy life more. I mean, spending time with your kids, you don't have to watch, you can get in and play.
Yeah. Man, that's awesome. Yeah, that's probably a big one for a lot of people. So what about somebody that has an injury that's just like, well, I'm injured, and you see these people in the grocery store riding around on their rascal scooter that are 400 pounds, and they're like, oh, I've got a bum leg, or and I don't mean to be a dick, and my heart does go out to them, but it just seems like it's just I'm sure you've got something, but it just seems like they could do something. It seems like there's got to be a way for them to do something to regain some of that mobility.
Absolutely. I don't mean to be, pimping out trainers, but that's a job for a trainer. I think
Okay.
just to get started, some people do have some serious, health issues.
Mm-hmm.
If we're just talking about an old football injury, you can usually work around that. There's always something that you can do for anyone, no matter what your fitness or health level is. And it's the job of a trainer to actually figure out what that is. And a good one will focus on progressing you through what you can do now up to what you want to do. And, just because I say you need to be squatting, a squat that Aaron would do, and a squat that Greg would do, and a squat that 400 person on a rascal scooter will do, probably are going to be 3 different squats.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That actually makes a lot of sense. So going on to nutrition, and I think a lot of people, my personal opinion is a lot of people get this backwards. They want to lose weight or they want to get in shape. So their immediate thing is, oh, well, I need to start exercising rather than cleaning up their intake. Where do you land with all of that? Let's get into that.
Well, let's first state I'm not a nutritionist, but I have some knowledge in this, and I can say that our diet is very sad. Being a standard American diet, it's actually horrible. We have way too many processed foods in our daily diet. We're not eating nearly enough vegetables. Most of the stuff that we're putting in our mouths is more of a food-like substance than it is actual food.
Yeah.
The real basic advice on that one is to eat more vegetables with make sure that you eat vegetables with every meal, and drink mostly water. Don't drink your calories, and try to also reduce the amount of grains. I'm not going to be one of those people that says, oh, you have to be gluten-free and carbs are the devil. I think carbs have a place in our diet, but it's a lot less than what most people eat.
So, and that's become a pretty hot topic in the past few years, where, in the world of like the GI diet versus paleo versus Atkins versus this versus that, where do you land? And for you personally, you're not a nutritionist, we got that, but where do you land with, going beyond just, eat more fruits and, and all those other things? Where do you land with all that?
I kind of go back and forth on this one. This is pretty tough. I love carbs, just like everyone else does.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done the extremes. I've completely cut them out of my diet. My wife is gluten-free, and she doesn't, have hardly any carbs at all. My body kind of likes me to be around 30% of my diet to come from carbohydrates. But I'm also one of those gym rats that's, spending 2+ hours a day, every day in the gym. So I need to restore those glycogen levels a little bit more than most people do. I think, like I said earlier, we need to reduce the amount of carbs that we're having. but we don't need to go completely off the wall and go, have a war on carbs. What happens with some people is they can be really inflammatory and they can cause pain for people who, have past injuries or some autoimmune issues. So I guess my answer is it depends on you.
Kind of, we're all a chemistry set. You have to find the balance that's right for you, kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair enough. So, there's two interesting things you touched on there: inflammation and gluten. The gluten-free thing, honestly, it's never been part of my nutritional concerns. What is the deal with things being gluten? It seems like everybody's convinced they have celiac disease these days. Everybody is wanting to be gluten-free. What is the story with that?
I wish I knew. I don't know. I think a lot of it has to do with, it's a bigger issue than just the food. I think that, all the things that we stuff in our food, like I said earlier, it's more like food-like substance than it is food. That can't be helping anything. It's our inactivity. It's our lack of muscle mass. That was another thing that I never touched on. A benefit of strength training, the more muscle mass that we have, the better our bodies are at eliminating toxins and bad things in our bloodstream.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the well-trained muscle mass acts as an organ of elimination, kind of like the liver or the kidney. And it has even been shown to secrete hormones like testosterone, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
As far as going back to your gluten question, I'm not really sure. I think a lot of it's people are untrained. I think we have really terrible diets, and it's just all come together for a big smelly mess.
Yeah. Okay. So a lot of people hear inflammation. It gets thrown around a lot these days. What are we talking about? Like, what is, in a nutshell, for the average listener, what is the story with inflammation? Like, I guess break it down from a simple standpoint for us so that we have an actual understanding. We're not just kind of glossing over the topic.
Again, I wish I was more of an expert on this one. And I don't know that I'm going to give this answer justice. A lot of the lack of movement and foods that we're eating is just causing our body to be distressed more than it needs to be. I guess that would be the easiest way to look at it.
Okay. Now, you mentioned, what people are storing, and storing food to you personally is big. And this is something I've wrestled with myself. And that is coming up with food storage that isn't garbage. Most of it is loaded with preservatives and sodium. I mean, it's kind of hard to get something to 25 years and it not be some sort of hinkiness going on, unless you've discovered something I haven't. But it becomes a real challenge. And this is one of the reasons I have kind of I have a love-hate relationship with the concept of copy canning, because it assumes that most people are eating a lot of canned goods to begin with. I personally don't eat any canned goods, with the exception of a few pickled things, like pickled okra, of all things. I know that's kind of weird, but I love pickled okra. I have like a thing for it. But other than that, I don't eat a lot of canned goods. And so trying to store food becomes tricky. It becomes very tricky because most of it's fresh fruit, vegetables, meats, and nuts. The nuts, I think, actually do store a lot longer than most people think. But tell us about that. How do you wrestle with that problem?
I feel like I'm in the same boat with you. This is something that toils in my brain all the time. I do try to get a good amount of canned foods and vegetables so that I do have something on hand. The key, I think, for people is that they need to learn how to produce this food moving forward. And, it's something that I'm still working on also. My wife and I are starting a gardening class tonight.
Oh, cool.
It's going to be 6 weeks long. So I'm pretty excited about that. I don't know what to do either, other than, making sure that people do you know how to hunt for food?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how to grow food? How do you produce this food when there isn't a store to give it to you?
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of where I'm at is, I got to just keep teaching myself how to do this stuff. And then as far as what I store, it's a lot of canned foods and a lot of canned meats, and I don't like it. And I'm still trying to find that, that magical grass-fed beef that will last for 30 years.
Yeah. The I think it's called unicorn meat. I think that's what it is.
Oh,
unicorn in a can.
That's what it is.
I think so.
But, a lot of people, when you talk to them, what they store for food, it's like, well, I've got all my spaghetti and ramen, and then I've got, and it's just junk food. And, you're right. A lot of the vegetables and meats that we do store that are in cans, they're not the best, but people aren't even storing that stuff.
Well, and I think that stuff definitely beats starving to death, or just going hungry for any sort of length of time. So,
yeah, and I run into a lot of people that they don't know how to quarter a deer or gut an elk, and that's a skill that we need to make sure that we don't forget.
It is, and you know what the tricky thing is? Because I remember years and years ago when I was getting started this, I had, when I was really sat down, I was like, okay, I'm seriously going to get prepared a little over a decade ago. And I had quartered animals. I had learned about it, but I had learned about it from, my dad, who learned about it from somebody else. And I felt I can be a bit of a perfectionist. So I really felt like maybe I wasn't doing it right, but I really wanted someone to teach me. And I ran into the same problem with rifle marksmanship and several other things. And rifles I solved with Project Appleseed, but trying to find a class or somebody who really teaches, here's how to hunt, here's how to fish, here's how to butcher an animal, that actually becomes very tricky, especially the butchering of the animal thing.
Yes. But, I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm in the Northwest and it's maybe not that hard. And there are probably, like places like Chicago and the inner city, places like that where you can't find people that hunt. But, build a community, talk to people, just ask around, be persistent, and find someone that does hunt and find someone that will take you hunting and just do it. I think that a lot of the problems that we have is we start building these list upon list upon list of things that we need to do, things that we need to learn, but we never actually go out and actually do it.
That's a very good point. That is a very good point. And I think for me personally, the way I overcame that was kind of like what we were talking about a little while ago, building a list of goals. And so for me personally, what I did was I would just break down each year into 2 to 3 skills that I was going to pick up that year. And that was the way I personally overcame making endless lists that went nowhere. Because that's real easy to do. Or the other thing is to make an endless list, try to do it all at once, and you get nothing done.
Right.
You just get a little bit here and there, and you're never really solid on anything, and just kind of bounce from topic to topic. And I think this was something that in my, going back to this again, when I was a real gym rat, I'd fallen out of this habit, and I should probably pick it back up again. But rest was a big thing. And I always know, like, I feel like crap when I stay up too late, even if I get the exact same amount of sleep. If I stay up too late, I don't have a good night's sleep. And when I was really serious about my physical condition, I was taking a nap every day, sometimes 2 a day, sometimes because of the workout, I would have to take one immediately after the workout. But what role does rest and sleep play for you in physical fitness?
Rest is a huge thing. We don't give it nearly enough credit. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm one of those crazy people that works out every day. In fact, I literally squat heavy every single morning, every single day. I've gone, 6 months straight of squatting heavy every single day. And I'm not recommending that everyone needs to do that. But what it has taught me is how important rest and nutrition really are in our life. If I don't get my 7.5 to 9 hours of sleep, I feel like garbage the next day. The rest is when all that magic happens. That's when our body recovers from the punishment we put it through. So not only do we need to make sure that we're getting 8 to 9 hours of sleep, But we need to make sure it's quality sleep. And that means getting rid of all the crap that's in our room. It needs to be black and as dark as possible. And you get rid of all the lights and sounds that pollute our bedrooms so that we get a nice long night's sleep.
Why is removing lights so important to you?
I just get a lot better sleep. I don't know if you've ever been to like a hotel room where they got like the blackout curtains.
Mm-hmm.
If you notice that you get better sleep when it's completely dark as opposed to when you're in your house and you don't have anything that knocks out all the light. That's kind of what I've noticed is the less light, the better sleep I get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I have two friends who put tape over the LEDs in their bedrooms because even that much light, like one of them I think complains about things too much, but they've gone so far as to just black out everything they can that makes light while they sleep. So it makes sense. And I think the example I gave was just kind of an extreme, but I know that's become an issue for me in my new house. There's the foot of our bed, the kind of north facing wall of our bedroom is all glass. And so there's a lot of light, and that we're in the city, even though we're on a larger piece of property, we're still in the city. So there's a lot of ambient light coming in. And I keep going, I don't know, maybe I need blackout curtains. So that's interesting to me that you find, because you're right. And I hadn't even thought about that like when you're in a hotel with those blackout curtains, you do tend to sleep better.
And those are crappy beds too.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I guess has there been studies on this, or not to put you on the spot for coming up with information out of your butt, but I'm just curious, just make a conversation here.
Yeah, I'm sure there has been. I haven't read anything personally, but
okay.
I know that, I've got a lot of friends and doctor friends that preach this, and it's something that I've not always done, but that's something that I've changed in the last several years, and it has made a big difference in the quality of my sleep. And so I just kind of trust the experts.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is physical fitness for you purely pushing and pulling weights, or is there more to it than that? Is there body weight exercises? How does that fill out for you?
For me right now, I've got a lot of powerlifting goals. And for those who aren't familiar with powerlifting, it's the bench press, squat, and the deadlift. I coached college track and field for 9 years, and I worked out with my athletes on a daily basis with them. And so I've always had these goals of what I wanted to do in those 3 lifts. And so I'm kind of following those. So right now, it is just doing heavy weights for the most part. But that practice of squatting, hinging, pushing and pulling, and weighted carries can be put into that workout, and it can be put into a body weight workout. One of my co-hosts on my podcast is big into calisthenics, and that's pretty much what he teaches with all of his clients. And so it's fun for us to go back and forth and talk about doing these movements either from a body weight perspective or from a heavy weights perspective. Mm-hmm. So you can accomplish any one of your goals following programs that follow these principles with a wide range of equipment and exercises.
Okay. And we've talked a lot about trainers. We've touched on it a few times in sort of professional guidance. How, and obviously you're going to be biased, but sell us on it here. Why, what's the real case for having a professional trainer, nutritionist, whatever, actually help someone, at least from the start, to develop some sort of routine or some sort of guidance? Why is that so important?
Sure. So one of the things is if we're hurt, we can't train, right? So most people either are coming to a trainer already hurt, or they get hurt when they're trying to train on their own just because of bad form. So the inexperienced person needs to be seeing a trainer, or an injured person needs to be seeing a trainer, absolutely, to start. But what a trainer can do is give you, they're a second pair of eyes that they can make sure that you're doing what you need to be doing. You're hiring them as an expert, and you're not an expert. So that's something that we all think that, I did weightlifting in high school, and my football coach said that we had to do this. Mm. A lot of things have changed in the last 30 years in fitness.
Just a bit.
So it's good to have someone that, one, holds you accountable, that can help guide you to your goals, and that can is an expert and can progress you through good movement patterns.
That makes sense. And you do bring up an excellent point as far as the second pair of eyes, because I know even certain things that I would do, having that second pair of eyes to say, nope, you did it. You're doing something goofy. Also that thing, especially with us guys, we can be pretty bullheaded about things and think, no, damn it, I'm doing it right, when the reality is you're not. And the other thing is, we all think we're invincible till we find out the hard way we're not, and injure ourselves, because it's pretty easy to injure yourself doing something incorrectly, especially as you start climbing in weight, or in difficulty of the calisthenic, whichever the case may be. So I think that's sound. And a big thing, I think there's a lot of, having been a former gym rat myself, I can say I think there are a lot of really shitty trainers out there. But so if you're going to give advice to a friend or family member who isn't able to work out with you necessarily, what kind of advice do you end up giving them so that they can go find the right professional?
That's a good question. It's easy and it's not. Finding a good trainer, well, if you're already like a member at a gym, like at a big box gym, you need, first off, to be pretty skeptical. If you see a trainer just counting reps and walking their clients through different machines, or they're not having their clients do the things that we're talking about today, that's not the trainer that you want. You want to see someone that's having them do the squats and the deadlifts and the pushing and the pulling, and that they're progressing them through movements. If you see them do the same thing over and over and over, that's not who you want. You want someone that is making sure that the movement pattern is advancing, meaning that they're not that we're standing on a Bosu ball and balancing and throwing medicine balls sideways and things like that. It's not necessarily what we're looking for either. But someone that's maybe they started just standing up from a bench, and a couple of weeks later they're doing a more full range of motion squat, those type of things.
So somebody that is actually building a tailored program for the person, and not somebody who just has a pre-formatted recipe that they run everyone through.
Yeah, exactly. If you see them doing the same thing with more than one person, that's not a good thing either.
Yeah. Okay.
And, you don't want to see a trainer counting reps while you're on a machine. There's a small time and place for machines, but we really need to be moving like free weights or our body weight.
I am in total agreement with you, but for the listeners, why are free weights more important to you than the machines?
Well, they give us a whole lot more freedom in movement to begin with. When you're on a machine, you're usually concentrating, you're locked into a range of motion as far, however that arm can articulate on that machine is all that you're going to do for movement. Mostly they're simple movements, right? It's an arm curl or it's a leg curl. It's not a big compound movement that's using a lot of your muscles.
So like a lot of the stabilization muscles are not getting involved at that point. Is that the right way of putting it?
That's one of it. Yeah. So you do have to you have to work on your stabilization with doing the movement, but the movement goes across more than one joint too, right?
Yeah.
So multiple joint movements is what you're going to get from free weights. And that's far more efficient and as far as getting a workout done. And it's going to make you a whole lot stronger. And I'm not saying that you can't use machines. Like I said, there is a time and a place, but you need a healthy dose of compound movements with free weights.
I guess where do machines come in? Is it just when you're trying to isolate a particular muscle? Or
Yeah, usually as an accessory, right? So if you do want to build up your biceps or triceps, or you want to hit, just your quads and things like that, I try to steer clear of them as much as I can. But bodybuilders will use them, but just because they need to get so much more volume in, and they can't get it all done in squats, they got to do some leg press and leg curls and things like that.
Okay, that makes sense. So you have a show. Tell us about that. Let's start with what inspired you, because podcasting, I know personally, can be is a real labor of love, and a lot more work goes into them than most people think. Why did your crazy brain think you wanted to do a podcast?
Well, you didn't tell me that it took a lot of work. Like I mentioned before, I coached college track for 9 years,
Yeah.
and my kids grew up and they wanted dad to coach them, and I just couldn't put in all the time that I wanted to both coaching and being a dad. But I've got a lot of good contacts and friends in the business, and I wanted to share that. And I can't ever step away from coaching and teaching. So the podcast just kind of happened on a whim. I was doing an interview with one of my friends, and just turned into like, hey, maybe we should turn this into a podcast. And it just took off. The show's called the Hammer Shed Podcast. And I've been lucky enough to talk with fitness professionals, doctors, researchers, Olympic athletes. So we cover a whole wide variety of topics, from nutrition to crazy things like vibration therapy.
I'm sorry, I'm a juvenile delinquent.
Yeah, sorry, whole body vibration.
Okay, all right.
So it's been a really fun journey, and like I said, I've had the opportunity to talk to some Olympians and researchers on protein synthesis. Yeah, it's a good show to hear a lot of training talk and research. I like to make sure that we're getting good information out to the viewers or listeners.
Well, really cool, man. I'm going to have to go check out your show and start listening to it. It sounds like you've got some great guests and disseminating some great information. Do you also do online training? I can't remember if we talked about that before or not, but I know you've got your kids and everything. Are you still doing any kind of training at all?
Yeah, I am. I do online coaching for people who want to do some strength and conditioning, some advice on very rough advice on nutrition. Like I said, I'm not a nutritionist, but I can give some tips on how to clean things up. And then I also coach the throws. Most of that's done in the summertime because athletes are with their high school or college coach during the season. So I'll do offline or off-season coaching with them, but online coaching with people that want strength and conditioning help. So we'll talk via email, and we'll do some video analysis and programming. Yeah, so I do some of the online coaching.
Okay, very cool. And how do people get connected with you and everything you're doing, and your website and your podcast, and if they need training and something like that, how do they get in touch with you for all that stuff?
Everything can be found at hammershed.com. Got a link for a coaching application. I've got links to the podcast. We keep a blog there and talk about all kinds of random things from time to time. So anything that's based around this, or if you have any questions, my email address is up there also. So hammershed.com.
Awesome. Well, Greg, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your knowledge of physical fitness.
Thank you.
Listeners, if you get at least $2.50 a month worth of value out of ITRH, well, ITRH is kept on the air by support from members just like you. Visit itrh.net today to find out about the cool survival benefits ITRH Roving Horde Armada members get. Again, that's itrh.net. Visit it today and help keep the show safe and sound that helps keep you safe and sound. As always, links, resources, and all kinds of other goodies can be found at intherabbithole.com/E169. And with that, we wrap up episode number 169 from the Lone Star State. Till next time, stay safe and sound.